Last week I had an opportunity to, I was asked to do a Bible study at our church on Wednesday nights. And we're doing the book called Lies Women Believe in the Truth That Sets Them Free. It's by Nancy Lee DeMoss. I highly recommend this book. I've taught it a couple of other times and got great results, great response, and so we decided to do it again. We actually had about 32 women show up last Wednesday night. I have a co-teacher, Debbie, who also takes part in this study. And the topic was the verse, I guess that I could say not necessarily a topic, the verse that stood out to me in Genesis 3 was after the serpent had talked to Eve. There was one sentence, Genesis 3:6, I believe, in the Living Translation, where it said, "The woman was convinced." And that really stuck with me. And how many times have we been convinced of doing something, and in the end it really wasn't what we thought it was going to be? Danny, I can't do this. I think it's stupid. Did you see how abruptly I left? Do you know why? Because I was convinced that I looked absolutely ridiculous on this tape. That's the truth. I'd like to give you an example about being convinced. In our marriage, early in our marriage, my husband and I, we used to do a lot of bike riding. And one day we were bike riding, going around, and all of a sudden I noticed this big black cloud overhead. And I was yelling to my husband, who was up in front of me, and I'm saying, "It's going to rain. I just know it's going to rain, so I think we should turn back and get back home." Because earlier I had put some clothes on the line, and I didn't have a dryer at the time, so it was the only way that I could dry my clothes. And I knew that they were probably pretty well dry, and I didn't want them to, have to hang out overnight. So the more we rode along, I could see the dark cloud, I could feel the wind picking up, and I actually could see the leaves turning over one by one. Now, I've been told by my mother that that means that a storm is coming. And so I don't know if he really believed that it was going to rain, or if he was just trying to put me at ease, but we turned ourselves around and we got back into the driveway, and it seemed to get darker and everything, and we hurried along and we put the bikes away, and my husband was telling me, "I don't think it's going to rain. It's not supposed to rain today." And I said, "Can't you see that black cloud? Feel it." And I was convinced that it was going to rain. So he had gone upstairs, because we lived on the second floor, and I had gone into the back porch area where the clothesline reached out to the other side of the garage. And I was frantically pulling in on the rope, taking off the clothes one by one. And as I was doing it, I could feel the rain start. And the more I kept pulling in, the more I could feel that rain. And I kept yelling to my husband, "I told you it was going to rain. Can't you see? I told you it was going to rain." And all of a sudden, as I looked up to see that big black cloud, I looked over my head, and there was my husband with a water bottle, and he was squirting it frantically and laughing at the same time. And here was these little drops of rain that was, well, really wasn't rain, it was him, was coming down. And for years, actually, we still laugh about it. But I was convinced, because I saw, or I thought I saw, all the signs. Sometimes we hear those little voices in our head that tell us certain things, and yet when we look into the Word of God, the Word of God tells us something totally different. The Word of God tells us that we are children of God. If we're believers, that we're His child. Sometimes we hear in our mind that we are worthless, that we are no good. But the Word of God tells us that we are special, that we are righteous through His Son, Jesus Christ. So it's not always the voice that we hear, but we need to seek the Word of God to know the truth, so that we would be convinced in His Word. I mean, that's what Eve did. She instead of going back to the source, which was God Himself, she decided to listen to the lie. Then after listening to lie, she began to believe it. And then after she believed it and it took root in her heart, then she acted upon it. We have to be careful what we are truly convinced of. It's not feelings. It's the Word of God.